The maintenance bay of the Stellar Wanderer hummed with the familiar sound of recycled air and distant engine vibrations. Katniss knelt beside her malfunctioning exosuit, tools spread across the metal floor like a surgeon's instruments. She'd been at this for 2 hours now, and the hydraulic actuator still refused to cooperate. "Come on, you stubborn piece of junk," she muttered, reaching for the torque wrench. Her hand closed on empty air. Katniss blinked and looked around. The wrench had been right there next to her knee. She scanned the immediate area, then heard a soft chirping sound behind her. Turning slowly, she found herself face to face with the problem. The Velcaran cub sat on its haunches, her wrench gripped carefully in its four-fingered paws. Its scales shimmered with patterns of purple and gold, colors that, according to the translation database, indicated curiosity and eagerness. The young predator was no larger than a house cat, but its obsidian claws and rows of serrated teeth reminded Katniss exactly what species she was dealing with, the galaxy's apex predators. The Velcarans. "Hey there, little one," Katniss said softly, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "I'm going to need that back." The cub tilted its head, crystalline eyes reflecting the bay's fluorescent lights. It chirped again and held the wrench higher, as if presenting a trophy. Katniss had been warned about the Velcaran delegation aboard the ship. 3 adults and 1 juvenile, traveling to the Concordat summit on behalf of their hunting clans. The adult Velcaran stood nearly 8 feet tall, with muscle density that made them capable of tearing through reinforced bulkheads. Their diplomatic credentials were the only reason Captain Morrison had allowed them aboard. And now their cub had escaped supervision and found its way to her. "Maintenance bay, your parents are probably looking for you," Katniss said, extending her hand palm up. The universal gesture of non-aggression, or so she hoped. The cub's scales shifted to bright orange. Excitement, the database had said. It scampered forward on all fours, bringing the wrench with it. But instead of returning the tool, it sat directly in front of Katniss and placed the wrench on the ground between them. Then it looked up at her expectantly. Katniss realized what was happening. The cub thought they were playing. She glanced at the partially disassembled exosuit. Her shift ended in 3 hours, and she'd promised Leo she'd join him for the station's movie night. They were finally screening that ancient Earth film he'd been talking about for weeks, something about people stuck in a building during Christmas, but those crystalline eyes stared at her with such innocent anticipation. "All right," Katniss sighed, picking up the wrench. But just for a minute, she returned to her work, loosening the hydraulic coupling. The cub watched intently, its head moving to track every motion of her hands. When Katniss set the wrench down to adjust the mounting bracket, the cub immediately grabbed it again. This time, instead of running away, the small predator held the wrench up toward the exosuit, mimicking Katniss's earlier movements. "Oh, you want to help?" Katniss couldn't suppress a smile. The cub's scales flashed silver, affirmation. What followed was perhaps the strangest maintenance session of Katniss's career. She would point to a tool and the cub would retrieve it, gripping the implements carefully in its dexterous paws. When Katniss needed to tighten a bolt, the cub would hold a flashlight steady, well, as steady as an excited predator juvenile could manage. Its scales constantly shifted through a rainbow of colors, each shade conveying a different emotion that Katniss was beginning to understand instinctively. "Socket wrench. The one with the red grip," Katniss said, and to her amazement, the cub brought the correct tool. She was calibrating the suit's power distribution when Leo's voice crackled through her comm. "Katniss, you still in Maintenance Bay 3? The Velcaran ambassador is looking for their kid." Apparently, the little terror chewed through a door seal and went exploring. Katniss looked at her assistant, who was currently investigating the interior of her toolbox with scientific curiosity. "Yeah, the cub's with me," she replied. "Safe and sound. Well, mostly sound. I think it tried to eat a hex key." "You're kidding. You've been hanging out with a baby apex predator?" "Hanging out is a strong term. It's been helping me fix my gear." "Right. And I'm the Emperor of Andromeda." Before Katniss could respond, the bay doors hissed open. 3 massive Velcarans entered, their scales displaying patterns of red and black, worry mixed with aggression. The lead ambassador, Kralshen, whom Katniss recognized from the departure briefing, zeroed in on the cub immediately. A deep, rumbling vocalization emerged from Kralshen's throat. The cub's scales instantly shifted to submissive blue and it lowered its head. But then something unexpected happened. The cub chirped back, gesturing toward Katniss in the exosuit. Its scales flickered through a complex pattern, orange, silver, green, purple, telling a story in colors. Kralshin's massive head turned toward Katniss. She instinctively took a step back, her hand moving toward the plasma cutter on her belt. "Peace, human engineer," Kralshin's translator rendered in a deep bass. "My offspring speaks highly of your patience and teaching." Katniss blinked. I was just fixing my suit. Your cub wanted to help. This is unexpected." Kralshin moved closer, each footfall like a small impact event. The ambassador examined the partially repaired exosuit. "You permitted a juvenile predator to remain in your presence? You showed no fear. You taught through action." "Well, your kid did steal my wrench," Katniss said with a nervous laugh. Kralshin's scales rippled with what the translator identified as amusement. "You understand, most species react with terror to our young. They see only the claws, the teeth, the predator heritage. They do not see the curious mind seeking knowledge. I grew up with dogs on Earth," Katniss shrugged. "Big teeth, lots of energy, hearts of gold. You just have to give them a chance." The cub chirped enthusiastically and held up the torque wrench again, apparently proud of still having it. "My offspring wishes to know if they may return tomorrow," Kralshin translated, "to learn more of human engineering." Katniss looked at the eager cub, then at her nearly repaired exosuit. Against all logic and probably a dozen regulations, she found herself smiling. Bay 3, 0800 hours. But next time we're starting with safety protocols. The cub's scales exploded into brilliant gold, pure joy. As the Valkyrins departed, Leo's voice returned to her calm. "Did you just schedule a maintenance shift with an apex predator?" "Yeah," Katniss said, watching the cub bounce excitedly between its parents' legs as they left. "Yeah, I did." "Humans," Leo laughed. "We'll befriend anything." And really, Katniss thought as she returned to her work, that was exactly right.